it's good to remember that as you lower your expectations, you increase your joy.
Yes.
So make sure that any rule you're going to set up for your kids, do you really want to have to enforce that rule?
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rock podcast. I'm back with Amy Sloan from Humility and Doxology, and we are talking about the preschool years. This is part of our Homeschooling Through the Years series, and this is such a fun and cute way to just kick this off. I wish that we could bring like all of you moms with all of your itty bitty little kids and just circle around and talk about this in person, because I know that there are a lot of questions that you have, especially if your oldest is preschool aged and you're just trying to figure out what homeschooling might look like now and in the future. And so I really hope that this is an encouragement to you and answers many of your questions, because unfortunately we can't all be together. So this is the best thing that we have for you, is to talk about it on the podcast. And Amy and I have both been through the preschool years. And so we are hoping that the experience we've had will be an encouragement and a blessing to you and a help to you as you navigate these really super fun, sweet years. So we're going to talk more about that. But before we do, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, BJU Press Homeschool. If you're looking for a great Christian homeschool curriculum, and we're going to talk about curriculum today, check them out at bjupresshomeschool.com. And they've got something for everyone. So whatever grade, whatever age, whatever subject you're looking for, they've got something for you. And they will really help equip you for a successful homeschool journey. So check them out, bjupresshomeschool.com. Well, Amy, welcome back to the podcast. Let's talk about curriculum, because this is one of the big questions, of course. Do I use curriculum for the preschool years? Do I not use curriculum? And like you mentioned before, this is kind of all over the board. You get some homeschool moms who are like, absolutely not, never use curriculum for preschoolers. They're just too little. And then you've got those moms who are like, oh, absolutely, you must use curriculum because they're in preschool and therefore in school. And so school requires curriculum. And so how do we navigate through this question, the big question of curriculum?
I don't know if this is a hot take, but I just have to say that maybe in the homeschool world, we should all pay more attention to minding our own business.
Right.
There can be, joking aside,
Agreed.
there can be so much vitriol or just like intensity where this is the right way to homeschool preschool or any age, really.
Right.
And so I just want to encourage the moms listening that there's not just one right way to homeschool preschool. And there's not just one right way to homeschool the rest of the time.
Right.
And even within your own children, your own family, there may be one thing that works really well for preschool with one child and it's different for another one. And that's totally fine. So there are some children that are academically ready to do more formal learning really early. I had one of those. By the time he was 3, he was already reading. So he had asked me to teach him to read before then, and he was ready. He was excited. And in order to meet his needs, I needed to start doing more formal academics with him much earlier than people on the internet would tell me I should start the preschool, right? Whereas the flip side, I had other children that really needed a little bit more seasoning before they were ready for that formal learning. So that is my pre-caveat, is that you need to do what's best for your unique children and your family. And so one question you may have is, is a preschool curriculum going to help me? I mentioned in our previous chat that I've never used a preschool curriculum. I loved the idea of including our learning organically through the day, kind of DIYing it. But if you're thinking DIY sounds scary, not fun.
Right.
Then get a curriculum. If you're just really excited and motivated and the thought of buying a little workbook for your kid just thrills your heart, get the curriculum, because mom's joy and enthusiasm is important too. Or maybe your child or you just thrive better on a little bit more structure. Get a curriculum, okay? So these are all really good reasons to have a curriculum, and you can find one that's going to fit your needs. So you're going to want to think about a few things. I mean, one is you're going to want to think about the cost. And there's the money cost, but there's also the cost of emotional investment, time investment, how much prep work there is for mom. Budgets are a reality for many of us. And there are preschool curriculums that can run from free, something like Ambleside Online Year Zero, to much more expensive. And now all of those are a lot cheaper than taking your kid to the preschool down the street. Okay.
Right.
A lot cheaper.
Yes.
But, figure out what's my family budget and then find a curriculum that works in that budget, and don't even think about the curriculum that don't fit your budget, because God doesn't have that for you and your kid's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So that would be one kind of basic thing, is what's the cost? Another thing is, how much time do you want to invest in the preschool lessons during the day?
Mm-hmm.
Most preschool curriculum are going to keep it to, an hour or two or less max a day. I really wouldn't encourage you to do one that's going to take more time than that for your young learner. But within that, there's really a range. So as you start researching curriculum, look for reviews, look for what the actual curriculum author says about how much time they're expecting it to take you a day. I actually have a roundup of some really common preschool curriculums, and that was one of the things I asked the curriculum writers. How much time are you expecting people to invest in this a day? So that's a really important question. Yeah. Also, if you're new to homeschooling, you may be starting to think about, what's my educational philosophy? Okay. You don't have to have it all figured out now, but this is the time to start your own mom development, right? Read all the books, listen to all the podcasts, and try to think, what approach to education do I want to take? Yeah. And then within that, you can find preschool curriculum that kind of match your idea. So I'm kind of interested in classical, maybe. Well, maybe something like the gentle classical preschool. Or I'm interested in Charlotte Mason, maybe something like Ambleside Online, or let's see, the
Simply Charlotte Mason. Another good
one. Simply Charlotte Mason. I wrote some of these down so I wouldn't forget. Oh, the Peaceful Press. If you're interested in unit studies, there's 5 in a Row. Yep. There's Little Explorers from Pan Barnhill. If you're excited about the idea of like a multi-age morning basket kind of idea, there's so many good options that you can really find that are going to fit your family's bigger educational goals. One thing to also think about with this, though, is if you're not 100% sure that you are homeschooling this child, in kindergarten or whatever, and you're looking at other options, you're going to want to think, okay, are there particular things that child needs to know for kindergarten? Perhaps that may be something that you would be considering as you looked at a curriculum. And in that case, you might want something a little bit more extensive, like a Sunlight preschool or something like that. But all that to say, there's an option for every budget, for every educational philosophy, for every mom's personality. There's really something you can find.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make a couple of comments on what you said. So when you talked about the time that it takes, and you would say, maybe depending on the curriculum, if you use a curriculum, maybe 1 hour to 2 hours a day, maybe. But for you new moms, please, please, please understand that does not mean that you need to sit your kid down for an hour or 2 hours all at one time and expect them to accomplish this curriculum. Like, okay, we're going to do this curriculum from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then we can have the rest of our day. Their attention span cannot possibly roll with that. And it shouldn't. And so don't get frustrated when you're like, but we've only been doing this 15 minutes and you're already bored and distracted. Yes, they're already bored and distracted. And so I would say an hour. I mean, like an hour is a fine amount of time in the preschool years if you're going to use a formal curriculum, but spread it out throughout the day. Don't do it all at one time. Do 15 minutes at a time, take a snack break, or have them run and play outside or go build blocks or something. Do another 15 minutes or have them accomplish something. Maybe you're going to do letters for 10 or 15 minutes and practice writing. Then maybe you're going to do some math skills for 10 or 15 minutes. But take breaks in between. Don't try to tackle it all at one time because they just can't. And you're going to get frustrated because they're going to start misbehaving and you're going to wonder why. And also, it's okay when they're doing some of it, if they're doing something else in the process of their academics. Like Brooklyn, when she was little, she loved baby dolls, loved them. And so she would have a little high chair that would sit next to her at the table. This is when I thought that she had to fill in all the blanks. She hated filling in the blanks. And she would sit with her little baby doll next to her, and she would feed her baby. And she would be like, I mean, we would be maybe 5 minutes into it. She'd be like, oh, Mom, her diaper's dirty. I have to go change her diaper. Okay. So then she'd go take her baby and she would change her diaper. Like it was just so cute because she was still learning. She was learning how to be a mommy. And if they're building and playing, they're still learning other things. They're learning throughout the whole day. So please just don't feel like you need to sit down through that whole time and make them do a worksheet or do the curriculum. The other thing is we did a series quite some time ago. It was maybe 2 years ago with Sonia Schaefer. And she talked about all the different methods. Cause I know, Amy, you were kind of throwing those out there, Charlotte Mason, classical unit studies. For those who are like I was, when I started homeschooling, I was like, I have no idea what you're even talking about right now. I will put a link to those episodes in the show notes, and it's going to be so helpful because it will really help you to understand what the different methods are. And you don't have to stick to one method. I mean, I would say most homeschoolers are pretty eclectic. They kind of use a little bit of Charlotte Mason, maybe a little bit of unit studies, maybe a little bit of textbook curriculum. You do what's best for your family. So don't feel like you have to know and understand and stick to one particular method.
Yeah.
I feel like that puts so much pressure on homeschool moms. And then what happens is they feel like they're not doing it right. So then they're going to put their kids in school because they're like, I've screwed it all up. I have no clue what I'm doing. And so I'm going to leave it to the experts and I'm going to let them continue on. So we've got lots more to talk about, but we need to take a break. We'll be right back. Have you tried CTC Math yet with your child? Here's a testimonial from another happy homeschool mom. Amber said, I'm absolutely thrilled with CTC Math. It's a rare find that I've used with my children for more than 5 years now. I have 6 children using CTC Math, and each child has found it easy to navigate and very applicable. Thank you so much for all that you are doing in providing quality math lessons for my children. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com. That's ctcmath.com. Are you looking for a homeschool curriculum that goes beyond textbooks and truly engages your children in the joy of learning? Apologia's award-winning curriculum is written by homeschool parents to specifically meet your needs and captivate your students with hands-on activities and experiments that make learning unforgettable. With an easy-to-follow, open-and-go format, Apologia takes the stress out of planning and provides a simple roadmap that can easily be tailored to your family's needs. Explore live classes or self-paced courses designed to accommodate every student's unique learning style. Elevate your child's education, spark their curiosity, and nurture a lifelong love for learning with Apologia. Discover Apologia today at apologia.com. We are back with Amy. So as we're talking about curriculum, I want to talk about the importance of read-alouds. And these are important all through their schooling years, but these are the little years. Can I just tell you how much I miss reading little children's books to my girls? Lacey let me do it for a while, but it's been a couple years now that she's like, Mom, really? And so I love it when I have friends whose kids come over and I'm like, I just want to read to you. And sometimes Lacey will humor me and she will let me read a Dr. Seuss story to her or something like that, because I just think it's so fun. And it would be odd for me to sit and read them to myself. So anyway, talk about the importance of read-alouds with our kids at these ages.
Yes, read aloud is such a valuable part of these early years. Well, all the years, but especially in these early years. And I should clarify too, when I was mentioning a time of preschool, your read aloud time counts.
Yes. Yep.
So sit and read for 30 minutes and wow, look at how much time we spent, doing school today.
Right.
But it was really fun with your books. So yes, I encourage you to look for books that are beautifully written, that the language is beautiful, that the illustrations are beautiful. A really easy way to test and see if a book is worth reading is how quickly do you get tired of reading it out loud. There are some books that I have probably read hundreds of times to my children, and I can still read them. I think of like Blueberries for Sal,
I
or
love that book.
Roxaboxen, some of those just classic books.
Yes.
They're so beautiful that you can return to them again and again. The Very Hungry Caterpillar, right? there are some great books. So that doesn't mean that you won't ever bring in just a really silly book your kid randomly finds at the library and you flip through and think, I mean, this isn't the best work of literature in the world, but they're excited and you read it to them. But for those books that you're going to really be reading again and again and spending time with, I would encourage them to be filled with truth and goodness and beauty. There's so many great resources too for finding wonderful book suggestions. If you're new and you're like, I am overwhelmed, there's so many books that I know are junk at the library. How do I know which ones to read to my kids? Get a good book about books. See Books Children Love, Honey for a Child's Heart. You have the Read-aloud Revival website has book lists. I have a ton of book lists, including a preschool book list on my website, but there are lots of great resources. So you don't have to go in blind to the library. I would not encourage that.
Nope. Don't do that.
No. And then invest in some for your home that you want to read more frequently. It actually, studies have shown that the more books a child is surrounded by in their home, even if they haven't read them all, it's correlated with their academic and emotional success. So I was like, hey, John, this is why I haven't gotten rid of all those books that are piling up everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
But Read-aloud is a beautiful time. And I would say too, if you have older kids, having them read to their younger sibling is a really beautiful thing to do.
Yeah.
And like you were bringing up the doll, you can have the stuffed animals. Maybe you and your little one read a story, have a story time for their stuffed animals. Things like that can be fun too.
Oh yeah. So many fun ways. And that helps to build that relationship that we talked about on Monday, is as you're reading to your kids, you're building relationship with them because you're experiencing these stories together. And that's such a fun way to teach them and to just bond with them. Like, I mean, I told you we were looking at these old pictures and I came across this picture of me and I'm sitting on my couch with both of my girls and we're reading a Beverly Cleary book. And it's just so sweet. Just even those memories. I still read to my girls. Now, Brooklyn is rarely home anymore, sadly. She's just busy with life and, doing all sorts of things. So she's not home as much, but I still read to her when I have the opportunity, and I still read to Lacey, and I absolutely cherish every minute that I get to read with my girls because that time is so special and so sweet. And so read aloud to your kids all the time, and building that relationship between the siblings. You've got sibling rivalry. You put your kids together and you have your older ones read to the younger ones. And that can really create a special bond between the two of them because then they're experiencing something altogether different than what you have. And then they have their own memories together, which is super fun for them.
And don't neglect poetry too. I should mention that. Like poetry as a read aloud. The Mother Goose Rhymes, A Child's Garden of Verses by Robert Louis Stevenson. It's a real opportunity to start developing that love of poetry in a very simple, easy way. And so that should also be part of your read aloud routine as well.
Yes. As we're talking about read alouds, talk really quickly about behavior during read aloud time, because I know oftentimes there are moms who are like, I want my kids to, you think about the traditional preschool classroom. I used to be a preschool teacher, so I know we had our little carpet squares and all of the kids had to sit on the carpet square, crisscross applesauce with their hands in their laps, and they had to sit still while I read them a book. And, they would wiggle around and pick their noses, and I have to go to the bathroom. And I mean, there were just so many distractions. And a preschool teacher can get a little bit annoyed at that. But a very wise mom will know that it is very normal and natural for her children to be flipping upside down and bouncing around or playing with something. So how did you do that with your kids as you did read-alouds, or as you still do read-alouds with them?
Yeah, so it's good to remember that as you lower your expectations, you increase your joy.
Yes.
So make sure that any rule you're going to set up for your kids, do you really want to have to enforce that rule? If it's really important to you, then be willing to have that be a priority.
Yeah.
But I encourage you to be a little bit more free. Let the children play. They can play with something quiet like wooden blocks or a train track. build with the Duplos,
Yep.
color, play with the stuffed animals, move around, flip upside down on the sofa. Depending on the child, they may need a lot more physical stimulus. So maybe even one of those little bouncing balls, you know, for the little children can sit on or spin around on.
Yeah.
Those are some ways to keep their hands occupied.
Play-Doh.
So they're not macking a
Play-Doh's
sibling.
amazing. Yes, yes.
And their body, like that motion,
Yeah.
so that they're able to actually pay attention better. So
Yeah.
you may have a snuggler. And if you have a snuggler who wants to just snuggle up with you and read, just snuggle for all it's worth. Okay.
Yes.
That's precious. But if your child is very active and running around, they're not doing anything wrong, find ways to channel it, set limits and boundaries. Okay. You can play, but you can't talk or yell. We have to all be able to hear the story, things like that.
Yes.
And sometimes actually, when you are reading more quietly, instead of trying to up your volume over the noise, sometimes that can actually help quiet the room because people want to hear the story.
Right. Yeah. Such good stuff. I learned that early in my homeschooling years and realized, okay, it's okay for them to be bouncing and flipping and all that. You know, but I think we just like when you go into it mentally, you're thinking crisscross applesauce on a carpet square. And that does a lot of kids much disservice. So we are just about out of time. So I want to ask just one last question. As we're talking about these preschool years, what does this look like in real life? Because you've done this 5 times and, you know, I know through your homeschooling, you've either had babies or you've had high schoolers and you're trying to homeschool a preschooler at the same time. And that can be really hard to balance all of the different ages and grades. And so how do you really focus on these preschool kids? Because sometimes I feel like they might just kind of get left in the dust because a baby requires a lot of attention. A high schooler or even a middle schooler requires a lot of attention because they are doing harder work and sometimes really need mom's help. So what has this looked like for you and your family in real life? And not that it's going to look the same for everybody, but what encouragement can you give to those moms who are like, I'm just not sure how to balance all of it?
Yeah, it changes constantly. And I think that can be hard sometimes, especially for those of us who like to kind of have a plan and a system in place. But to be willing to flex as nap schedules change and then a time change throws everyone off or class schedules change, right? We know as moms, if we have lots of little ones, we already know that there's sort of these changing, a constant moving target of when is the best time to feed the kid lunch before they get too hungry and cranky, right? Those kinds of things we already know as moms, very naturally, we know how to do that. And so take that skill you've developed as a mom and kind of realize you have the flexibility because you're homeschooling to change things even through the year. I think that would be one piece of advice. You know, there are things like, okay, you don't have to do the preschool first thing in the morning. When is maybe a baby going to go down for that first morning nap? Maybe let it be playtime, get some energy out in the morning while everyone's awake. And then once you put baby down for their morning nap, then we have some sit down formal preschool learning with the older sibling. Or on the flip side, maybe you make sure your older children have their independent work first thing in the morning. That's what I ended up doing with my younger few children. It was really important to me that I prioritize their learning as well, just like I had with their older siblings. And I knew for myself, I was going to get tired and not feel like doing it if I waited until after lunch. So I would have my older children work on their independent work first and just devote that first 30 minutes, 45 minutes to my youngest child and really fill their emotional tank. So they knew mommy loved them, even if they had to be quiet later while I was working with another child. But it also was a way for myself to make sure I prioritized their reading, you know, their read aloud time, their whatever it was we were working on. So those are just a few ideas that I have personally used over the years. But I think just going back to the other thing, I mean, just being willing to flex and change as schedules change, nap schedules, life schedules, that's really okay. And it's all part of homeschooling in those little years. And there's a lot of mess too. I would just say it's very messy.
Oh,
and
yeah.
very loud. And if you're tired, sometimes mom just needs a break, and that's okay too.
Yes, agreed. Power naps are amazing. Do you take power naps ever?
Not very often. I find if I try to take a nap, I get really groggy.
Really?
I wish I could nap.
Oh, well, okay. So I can take literally a 15 or 20 minute power nap, and it can, I mean, I don't do it often, but I don't know. I have this amazing ability to just close my eyes for 15 or 20 minutes, and I feel like a completely new person. And I don't get into that deep sleep phase. So I don't feel groggy usually when I wake up, but it's just enough to, I don't know, kind of revive me. And it's weird. I know not everybody can do that though. I think what happens is sometimes moms try to take naps and then they take a really long nap. And then you get into those really deep, I know there's words for them, but I don't know, REM sleep or whatever, those deep phases of sleep. And then you can just forget about it after that. You're going to feel horrible when you wake up. So anyway, try a 15-minute nap or a 20-minute nap. Set your alarm and see if it works. Anyway, people need naps. Preschoolers need naps. Oh, let me ask you this on that topic. At what age did you stop giving your kids naps? Was it different for all of them?
I think it was just different for each of the children. And the younger ones probably had less naps just by virtue of being drug along to older kid things. And that's all, I was very precise with the naps with the first couple.
Yeah.
And that's just something that's different with different children and different family needs too, right?
Sure. Yeah. Did you do quiet time with your kids? I know a lot of people will have a quiet hour of the day, usually in the later afternoon, maybe 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, where everyone goes kind of off to their own corner, maybe to their bedroom or on a blanket or something. And they have to just have their own quiet time so that mom can have her quiet time. And that takes a lot of training, but it can be accomplished in most homes. Did you do that with your kids?
We did. That was so valuable, especially just to give mom a little break.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of build up to it. And it will depend on the child, the living situation, who's sharing rooms.
Yes.
But even if they can't all go into their own bedrooms, if you can find a place for them to play quietly, I didn't require them to be completely silent. They could listen to music or an audiobook or play or look at a book or something.
Yeah.
The just rule was you can't bother me or a sibling. As long as you're quiet and don't bother me, I really don't care too much what you're doing.
Right. Yes. And not that kids are a bother. I know you don't mean it that way. It's just mom needs a refresher and, and maybe you just need that time to fold a load of laundry or call your mom on the phone or do something. Take a shower. There's a novel idea. Take a shower. That would be amazing. Oh man. It's so funny. I remember hearing moms before I had kids joke about getting a shower. And then I had kids and I was like, oh, that's a real thing. Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to shower in the day.
With older children.
Yeah.
That's too much to do.
Yes. Anyway, this has been so much fun, Amy. Thank you for joining me this week. Thank you for joining me for this specific episode. I've had so much fun really just reminiscing about mine and your preschool years. And I hope that what we have experienced in the just conversation we've had this week, I hope that it will be a great encouragement to our audience. So once again, for those who might have missed it in Monday's episode and yesterday's episode, tell our audience where they can find you.
I would love to connect with your listeners about preschool or homeschool, anything. So please come and find me at humilityanddoxology.com. Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, YouTube, all the places, Humility and Doxology, and then listen to the Homeschool Conversations with Humility and Doxology podcast.
Sounds great. We will link all those in the show notes. We have lots of links in the show notes. Garrett's going to be like, whoa, how do I get all these in there? But we will do that for you. So you guys don't have to go searching for all the things. Thank you guys so much for listening. You are such a blessing to us. I want you to know, as our listeners, we truly, genuinely love you, because if you were not on the other side of this camera and microphone, we would have no purpose in doing what we do. And it is truly our pleasure to serve you, to encourage you, to equip you for just being a homeschool family who really cares about discipling your kids and pointing them to Jesus. That is what we really are all about here. And so if there's any way we can be a blessing to you, I've told you before, send us an email, podcast@schoolhouserock.com, and you can find everything at our website, including the movie. You can find our sister podcast, which is the Homeschool Insights podcast. For those who don't know, we have another podcast, and it's actually just short clips of other podcast episodes that we've done, and from Homegrown Generation, which was an online conference we did, it's just like 7 to 10 minute power clips of homeschooling encouragement. And that's 5 days a week. Find it on YouTube, and you can find it on any podcast app that, whatever you're listening to this on, you can find it there as well. So, and if you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and share this with your friends. Have a great rest of your week. Stay tuned in the very end, hear what's coming up next week on the podcast, and we will see you back here then. Bye.
Laughing in the face of imposter syndrome and coming to you from the epicenter of manly overconfidence, I'm your host, Garrett Hampton, and you are listening to The Thinking Dad.
Even if we're able to push the evildoers and the totalitarians back for another generation, maybe if we work really hard, maybe even 2 generations, if they've got the young people, it's over.
I often think about Daniel's parents, who you don't hear anything about. But they must have laid down the foundation for Daniel to be able to go into Babylon and not fall.
We're in that very beginning part of the cycle for tough times. We've been fat and happy. We've been enjoying we're lazy because we enjoy so much freedom. We got all these blessings, and why would you go do the hard work? And so for a long time now, decades, we haven't had to do the hard work. We've been living on the fumes of previous generations paying the price. And we got to raise the bar and say, I'm willing to give more of my life, that's my time, more of my money, of course, that's our fortune, and more of my sacred honor, which is my reputation. I'm willing to put it all on the line. Every single one of us has to be willing to do that.
Join us for the first season of The Thinking Dad at thinkinggdad.net.
Elementary is still such a formative time for your children, and you can really lead them to a place where they despise learning and they despise education and school in general, or you can lead them to a place where they learn to love learning. And those elementary years are just so important for not squashing that excitement. We tend to, with preschool and kindergarten, we tend to do all the fun things and keep it fun and light and exciting. And then we hit elementary and we kind of have a freak out moment where we're like, oh no, now we have to do real school.
Yeah.
And so we try to add in, hours worth of seat work for little tiny people who are not at that place where they can sit for hours upon hours. And so you really have to be careful that you don't suddenly cut off the fun and you don't suddenly send them down a path of really not enjoying school.